Here's how you can be more agile to learn quick and move fast. In software engineering, there's this concept known as Agile. It's more or less used as a framework for building software really quickly and delivering value to customers. But you can apply this to your own learning journey. All you have to do is just keep these principles in mind. The first principle is to become fast and iterative. This is the heart of Agile. It's the ability to move fast and at an iterative pace. This means that you're not doing as much planning as you think, and you have a focus on always iterating. This is iterating towards the next milestone, towards the next release, or even towards that feeling when you're ready to move on. The second principle is interactions over process. Planning, in fact, can get in the way of a lot of the things that we want to do. So rather than have a long-winded process, we really focus on the interaction. This can really just mean being more hands-on and doing the work. Because ultimately, the process is about doing the work. It's not about planning all the work. So when there are opportunities to apply what you're learning, you should go for them. Instead of thinking or planning about doing it, you should just do it. All right, on to the third principle. Do the things that work. Not everything that you do or learn is going to work out for you. You're going to fail a lot, and this is a good thing. When this happens, you always can fall back onto the things that you know works for you. This isn't to say that you should not learn how to do things better, but that you can always fall back onto things that you know work. In fact, you should always strive to learn, experiment, and try something new. All right, and the fourth principle is responding to change. Look, our lives are full of change, and having an ability to respond to that change is extremely important. By the time we're done with an iteration, we're going to be smarter, stronger, and faster. If we simply just do what's next on our to-do list, that doesn't necessarily mean it's right, because now we're smarter, and maybe that next item isn't the right thing to be doing at the time. In fact, we should be following our natural curiosity instead, because we have this newfound understanding and maybe it just doesn't make sense. So you should just know that things are going to change. Your plans are going to change, your next items are going to change, but that's okay. You should embrace the fact that you should follow your curiosity. But whatever you do, do not dwell on it because you gotta move fast. That's the first principle. So we talked about Agile in terms of a framework. Here are the 4 principles that you can use. But now let's talk about how you can implement Agile into your everyday learning process. There's 2 methods that I'm gonna cover today in this video, and that is Scrum and Kanban. The first one is Scrum. You use a concept known as a backlog to really manage your to-do list, and that serves as the ultimate truth of everything that you need to be doing. Each item on that backlog is a bite-sized piece that you can take off at any time and do it within a sprint or an iteration. Some of these pieces might be bigger than others, some might take a week, some might take a whole month. But the focus of Scrum is this idea of sprints. A sprint is a number of weeks in an iteration until you call it done. For example, you might have a 2-week-long sprint, and that's how long you're going to take to do a certain amount of work. Or you might even have a monthly long sprint, which will take about 4 weeks, where you can do a little bit more work inside of it. And to kick off these sprints, you have these things called ceremonies. There's a few different ceremonies, and they can be especially useful just if you're learning by yourself. That first one is going to be sprint planning. So say you're going to take on a monthly sprint of learning. You've got about 4 weeks of what you want to learn. Now in the sprint planning ceremony, you're going to look at your backlog and take things from it to fill in those 4 weeks. The thing about sprint plannings though are that they're really trial and error. You're eventually going to get a grasp for how much work you can actually take on. It's not an exact science, so don't hold yourself too accountable if you miss a deadline here and there. But rather, it's just a means to hold you accountable. The next ceremony is this idea of a daily stand-up or a weekly sit-down. This is really just a way to check in with yourself along that sprint. And the way that I prefer this is just asking yourself 3 simple questions. What did I do yesterday or last week? What will I do today or this week? And what's in my way? This just helps us understand where we're blocked. And if we're blocked, we're going to find a way to get unblocked. This can take you all up of 10 minutes a day or 30 minutes a week. And these are extremely useful to make sure that your sprint plan works out. All right, the last ceremony that you probably should care about is a sprint review and a retrospective. At the end of your sprint, you're going to go through all the items that you completed and the items you weren't able to complete. You're going to understand if there are any major blockers in your work. You might be able to think of ways that you can get unblocked or even swap out the work and come back at a future date. You'll be able to review all the different challenges and learnings that you had along that sprint. And you can incorporate them into your next sprint to make that even more successful. And the cool thing about reviews and retrospectives is that you should be celebrating them. Look, you just completed 2 to 4 weeks of work. That's a huge accomplishment. So you should celebrate these. And as you celebrate these wins, you're going to get in a habit of doing this over and over and over again. All right, so that's enough of Scrum. We're gonna jump into Kanban. Now, Kanban is a Japanese word meaning billboard. It's a more visual system than Scrum. And the reason why it's so visual is that it helps you balance your efforts and be able to spot bottlenecks when they come up. Now, the biggest component of a Kanban is a board. These could be physical or digital boards where you're just putting tasks in a different column. This could be your wall, or this could be an app like Trello. Whatever the representation is, it has some type of columns that you're going to put items underneath them. And the items that you're going to put under are called cards. These are cards that give you enough information to know what you should be doing next, the priority, and who should be doing it. So when you can pick up that card, you know exactly what you're doing and when it should be done by. And as you have that card in your hand, you have usually 3 different columns that you can be choosing from. You have a to-do column, which is more or less your backlog. You have an in-progress column, which means that you are doing it right now. And you have a complete column, meaning that you already completed it. Of course, you can personalize this to however many columns you want and categorize your cards however you need them. Now, the one cool thing about Kanban is this idea of work in progress limit. With Scrum, we just try to put in as much work as we can that will fill in the time of the sprint. But with Kanban, you're continuously iterating, and so you don't necessarily have a sprint. Instead, you have a work in progress limit where you only limit yourself to, say, 3 different cards at one given time. This allows you to focus on a small amount of tasks rather than a large amount over a sprint. This just helps make sure that you don't bite off more than you chew and that you can actually accomplish what you need. This overall makes Kanban a bit lightweight compared to Scrum. So what you should take away from this video today is that Agile is a framework. It's a set of principles that you use to become better every single day. Scrum and Kanban, on the other hand, are just implementations of Agile that you can use to become more effective, especially with your organization. Whatever you choose to use in terms of how you organize and how you learn, that's up to you. These techniques are pretty tried and true, and they might help you on your journey to become a developer. Whether you set some time every single month to do a sprint, or whether you just have sticky notes on a wall, it doesn't really matter. What does matter though is that you are taking initiative and that you know what you are doing next. And if you don't know what you're doing next, make a backlog. Put the things that you haven't learned yet on that backlog and get hands-on and start to learn them.